Hello, everybody. Stu and I are back with another top 10 list. Who joined the list this week? Who dropped off the list? And most important, who is number one? Find out after this. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to JC3 Cards and Collectibles, where we are here with our installment series, the top 10 and 10, the liquidity list for football. That's right. Football season is still in the off season for the most part. We've got some mini camps going on. Training camp, full training camp is a little bit around the corner yet. But football is a sport that sells year-round. So we are here today. We're going to go through our updated list of the top 10. We will look at that second tier to the top 20 as well for you, give you an idea of the cards that are turning quicker. This is all about volume. This isn't about price. It's not the cards who are making the most money, but it is the cards who are turning the most. My source of data is eBay sales volume, and I look at that for you. I scroll through all those numbers, find out the player names that are selling, how much they're selling, and do all that work for you and present it in a format that you can watch in a quick 10 minutes and help you with your sourcing for football cards. So, good list this week. Mostly the same names, a little bit of shuffling, but one new name this week. Somebody got a new contract, which caused a little more focus in the news for this player. And of course, that means somebody had to drop out of the list. I will tell you, a Hall of Famer dropped out of the list, and it breaks my heart a little bit. One of my favorite players as a kid growing up. But that is the nature of the list. It is going to ebb and flow. Players are going to bubble up, and then they're going to bubble down. You just never know from week to week where they're going to be. And then, of course, we want to know who's up at the very top. Who are those players that I can feel safe just buy, because I know I'm not going to be stuck with them. I'm going to flip them. So let's take a little look right up here. Let's take a look at where we were last week. So there is our top 10 from last week. You can take a quick mental picture of our list last week before we jump into this week. Now, as a reminder, this list is not to say go out and buy everything like gangbusters, because that is a surefire millionaire scheme. Like with anything, make sure that you are out there buying cards only to what your budget allows. But the thing that can really help you with this list is just knowing the names to look for, to stay within your budget and buy those cards you need. So, for example, if player X is high on this list, I know I can feel pretty safe buying 10 cards of that player, and walking away knowing at worst case scenario, I'll be able to flip those pretty fast, versus somebody who is not on the list and buying 10 copies of player Y that's not on the list, and then I'm sitting on most of them for a year or more, or heavily discounting them until eventually I have to put them in my dime box. That is kind of a surefire recipe for taking some losses. But also, I would remind you that just because a player is not in the top 10 doesn't mean there's not some buying opportunity. It's just you have to think about it a little bit differently, because you may take a while to sell those players. So, having taken a look at last week's top 10 list, let's go ahead and get started on this week's top 10 in 10 for football.
Running into our top 10 this week, Hall of Famer Barry Sanders. Number 9. Justin Herbert. Leaping into the top 10 at number 8, Justin Jefferson. Number 7, Anthony Richardson. Number 6, Trevor Lawrence. Rounding out our top 5, Bryce Young. Number 4, Joe Burrow. Number 3, Tom Brady. Number 2, CJ Stroud. And maintaining his dominance of the number 1 spot, Patrick Mahomes.
Well, there you go. Another week and another Patrick Mahomes victory at the top of our list. At this point, I don't see Patrick Mahomes being unseated for quite some time. It would take something catastrophic this year. He sold 2,208 cards this past week. The next closest player, CJ Stroud, sold 1,882 cards. It's a pretty sizable gap between 1 and 2 that CJ Stroud will have to make up. Now, the last 2 weeks, CJ Stroud has been pushing pretty strong with his volume. So maybe there's a chance. Maybe there is a chance that CJ Stroud, especially if he gets off to a hot stop, I can't talk, hot start, he will, challenge Patrick Mahomes. The quarterbacks are usually at the top of this list, so he certainly has the tools and the right situation, the challenge. Don't count out Tom Brady, even though he's retired. He's always capable of ranking up high on this list. And then we have Joe Burrow coming back. Didn't have a great year last year, battled some injuries. If he comes back and sets the world on fire, certainly could challenge as well. From there, the Bryce Youngs, Trevor Lawrence, Anthony Richardson, I think they've got a ways to go to challenge for that top spot, but certainly moving a lot of cards out. We talked in the intro that we had somebody new on the list this week. That was, did you catch it? That was Justin Jefferson. That is the impact of a new contract that got him going in that media cycle quite a bit. You couldn't turn on SportsCenter or watch your local news sports section without hearing about Justin Jefferson and his new contract. Fun fact, I heard this the other day and it just made me shake my head. Justin Jefferson's contract pays more than the combined receiving staff of the Green Bay Packers. And who's where in the hierarchy of the NFL? Who's got a better chance of making the playoffs? I don't know. So, of course, with Justin Jefferson making a push and surging into our top 10, which, by the way, what was the impact of that media cycle? Well, last week, Justin Jefferson sold 983 cards. The week before, he sold 651. So over 300 more cards this past week. It'll be interesting to see if he slides back down over the next week. I think there's a good chance that might happen. Receivers typically aren't highly represented in our top 10 list. It's dominated by quarterbacks. And then some Hall of Famers usually round out that top 10. Speaking of which, Barry Sanders still rocking on in there. But we talked about somebody had to fall out to make room for Justin Jefferson. That really hurts me a little bit. And that player was Joe Montana, I believe, who was number 10 last week, and actually had better numbers in this past week. 822 cards sold versus 776 the week before, but he was pushed out of that top 10 because of the surge by Justin Jefferson. That means it's a good chance Joe Montana will be back in our top 10 at some point. But who knows? Around that area, Aaron Rodgers, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen of the Bills, those guys could get a push into that top 10 as well. Speaking of that, why don't we look at tier 2, numbers 11 through 20? We'll put those up here. 11 through 20, Joe Montana, Aaron Rodgers, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen of the Bills, Emmitt Smith, Brock Purdy, Jamar Chase, another receiver getting a little bit of love out there, Jordan Love, CeeDee Lamb, our third receiver in the list, I believe, and one of my favorites, hometown player of the Green Bay Packers for many years, Hall of Famer Brett Favre rounds out the top 20. So, what do you think about the list this week? Any surprises? Anything that you think we missed? At this point, we are looking at stats for almost 200 players to compile this list every week and give you a good idea of who's hot and who's not. But sometimes there will be some up and comers that sneak up that maybe we don't catch right away. So use those comments. Let us know if you think we're missing somebody. If we didn't miss them and they simply didn't make the top 20, we'll reply back and let you know kind of where they sit in the list overall, so that you can kind of tweak what you're thinking about that player. Um, we can get some surges in our individual store sales. That doesn't necessarily mean the whole market is hot on a player. Sometimes there's very targeted sales on a certain seller, which is great for you. I love nothing more than seeing, hey, I'm the only one in eBay's United States website that sold copies of a certain player this week. That does happen, but that would not qualify them for the liquidity list, because the liquidity list is about high volume, flipping cards fast. If you meet those criteria of good pricing, good quality, good variation, all of those things should make players on this list go pretty fast if needed. All right, one more topic for the day before we say goodnight. We've been doing this list weekly, and now we're on our third week in a row. After much deliberation and looking over the changes in the numbers and players every week, we've made a decision. We are going to go to a more of a bi-weekly schedule, maybe even every 3 weeks. So no list next week. We'll skip at least a week before we jump in, but we will have our baseball and basketball lists coming up in the next week, before we get them on a cycle of every 2 to 3 weeks as well. So I think that'll give us a little more helpful information. We'll see more changes over a little bit longer span. And in the end, it's all about helping us understand who are those players out there to go out and get and look for a quick sale on, maybe buy a little more volume for those quantity sales. So that's what you can really use this list for, I think, is in helping you target some buys out there at your card shows, or looking at lots on eBay, or doing some shopping on Whatnot, whatever it may be. This list hopefully can help you kind of target in on those players that you can feel pretty safe buying at the right price, because that you should be able to flip them pretty quickly. So, all right, if it's your first time here, hit that subscribe button. It's the best way to get notifications that new content is coming out. If you like and appreciate this content, let me know. Smash that like button so I know this is helpful to you. Gives me a little encouragement to keep making these videos and putting this content out there. So if you would please smash that like button. Let me know you're watching it, you're liking it. And let's see, anything else, Stu? I guess he says no. So until next time, peace out. Take care of each other.